Have we done one of these, just the two of us without Troy before? It's very exciting.
Yeah, it's like Dad's gone.
He's very negative about this episode, so I think it's going to be great.
He's fuming. He was just not having any of the topics we wanted to talk about. He nearly threw out the word naive a couple of times, I'm sure.
So let's get started. Welcome to People vs. Algorithms. I'm Brian Marcy. I'm joined by Alex Schleifer, and later our friend Anonymous Banker is going to be coming through. Troy is in some sort of lavish riad in Morocco, so he's unable to join us because we did not shift the podcast for his schedule, and He's mad about it.
Yeah,
that's the behind the scenes drama that I don't think people care about, but maybe they do. So Alex, today I want to get in deep with you about what it takes to build good products, because this is your world, right? And I think the perspective that I appreciate that you've brought to this show is basically reminding everyone who's listening to it, who's in the media industry and has any number of issues that they're dealing with, is that the way out is through building better products. So we're going to talk about how that happens, why media companies tend to not ship very good products. And then Anonymous Banker is going to join us to discuss why Travis Kelsey is now an activist investor. Does that sound good?
That sounds fun. Okay.
So I want to start with a couple of news items that we've been discussing and that will play into this a little bit. One is around, we're constantly tracking AI, right? And I feel like we've moved overall with tech. This is my sort of feeling with where we are right now, is I oscillate between feeling like we're in an age of wonders to what is this shit? Because I was on a flight to Miami late last week, and the pilot was like, "Look out the left side. There's a SpaceX rocket going by." I was like, wow. Oh my God, this is like the Jetsons. And then I get here and there's all these delivery robots around Miami now. And I regularly run into them. They're stranded and they look traumatized. They put names on them and they have lights. I don't know if you have these.
They have little faces. They look like their lights look like little faces. They're like
right.
They look like little beach coolers with wheels on. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's to make sure that people don't abuse them. Like they have to.
I'm sure there's psychology behind it for sure.
But I was like biking back last night. I met a friend for dinner and I came across one from Coco. So they're Uber Eats. They're supposedly delivering Uber Eats and they're regularly lost and they're just standing still, like traumatized. So I don't know who is ordering this food, but your French fries are going to be incredibly soggy. I came across one from Coco last night and it was stranded along the beach walk. And then I biked this morning down and it was still there. So again, some of the things are there, some of the things are not there. And again, this is how I feel with AI, because, this week, NVIDIA passed $5 trillion in market cap. Like it was like, I just remember it was like a major thing when a company crossed 1 trillion. And now we're clearly steaming towards Elon Musk actually passing $1 trillion in personal wealth. And OpenAI made a big deal with Microsoft. They also, reorganized the company finally. This stuff I don't really care about. What I do care about is that they're planning on plowing another $1 trillion per year into AI infrastructure. And then I'm using it. I just don't see where this stuff is showing up, in productivity gains. On the other hand, we have all of these rolling layoffs, these massive layoffs that are taking place, not just in tech, but particularly in tech, as they're taking, it seems like, employee costs that were always inflated and just transferring those into compute and infrastructure, right? And I think the easiest thing for reporters to cover this is AI. It's the perfect story because you're just waiting for AI to take everyone's jobs, et cetera. but it's more complicated, right?
Yeah, for sure. Living in an age of wonder and then just having the rug pulled. That's the experience I think that you have with AI as well. Like yesterday, I was talking to my AI, my voice chat, and I wondered, hey, can you actually turn yourself off? If I just say, turn it off so I can, I don't need to talk to you anymore. I don't have to press the button because it was across the room. He goes, yep, I can do that. All right. And I was like, okay, did you turn yourself up? Sure can. And like for the next 30 seconds, I was just telling, there's no way the AI couldn't stop talking. It didn't know how to do it. And so you keep realizing there are these pretty massive dead ends that come with these AIs, with like what the agents are capable, etc. And I think there's an entire industry that's built on kind of polishing off or hiding off all of these kind of little glitches and things like that, and selling a promise that is, as of today, not at all possible. Like I'm very excited about the technology, but I think that this idea that AI is going to replace all these jobs is still kind of like people are making decisions ahead of the curve here.
Yeah, and I find it's very. It's not surprising exactly, but like the initial uses are being used to replace entry-level people rather than managers. What you're seeing is in these layoffs is people are thinning the ranks of managers. And I have this like sort of theory is that there are a lot of managers who think they're leaders, right? And there are a lot of coordinators who think they're managers, right? And AI should come for a lot of these roles. And look, I don't like blame these people. Like the way my overall sort of theory is like we all operate within these systems that we don't control. We just try to do our best within them. And that goes all the way to capitalism, right? And the systems that have been set up have been with managerial capitalism have been incentivized everyone to get some kind of expertise and then as quickly as possible, do not do the thing you have expertise in. Start managing people. And there is, of course, there's reason for that. You can scale yourself if you're just like making everything yourself, et cetera. But it's left an entire swath of people who, again, they've responded to incentives. They've become managers. And meanwhile, just kind of like the learn to code people, then AI came for the coders. It seems pretty clear that it's going to come for this middle manager class. Now, it hasn't happened yet because anyone who's been through layoffs knows that the managers do the lists and they never go for the managers. They're like, no, we're absolutely critical. We're going for some junior people.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, have you ever worked in? You've reported on organizations, right? So
I've worked in a large organization like Nielsen, which is like big. Yeah, massive company, and I saw the sort of dysfunction of that. The guy who runs Boeing was running the company ineptly, so I'm not shocked that those planes fell out of the skies.
I've been thinking about it. I think, and even when I was at Airbnb, I had a lot of people on my team. I probably had hundreds of people who were managers on my team, which is scary to think about. It's funny, for all the bravado about just throwing out the rule book in technology companies, a lot of that was like surface sheen. We had maybe friendlier HR and better food and stuff like that, but management structures were pretty much the same that people had been using for decades. And I was looking back, and a lot of this modern management was defined by other tech companies, IBM, General Electric before that, folks like McKinsey. When you bring in McKinsey, you're in fucking trouble. And so these companies, nobody had the courage to say it, but were incredibly bloated. And the entire promise of okay, you're going to move forward in your career is at some point you're going to become a manager and manage other people. And they were very layered. Even Google was very layered. The idea of scale was like you created these massive pyramids that had lots of depth in them. I think AI is a cover. I think COVID was a cover. I think what people are doing is the things that, are finally available to them because they have this cover. Elon was cover with Twitter, and now there's going to be lots of cuts, right? Jensen Huang has 50 direct reports. People don't really believe in management structures and one-on-ones. I think this is all covered. These jobs are not being replaced by AI. I don't believe that. I haven't seen that once. I don't believe any tool I've seen yet can really replace AI, except for very junior data entry stuff, right? So that's, that's like we're heading into fun times where there's both a bubble and then lots of people losing their jobs.
Yeah, it's a really strange, and then we'll move on to other topics, but I'm definitely getting, I guess I've lived through a couple of bubbles at this point. I mean, the two that really stand out are the dot-com bubble and then the housing bubble. And it's funny because as you get older, the memories of those become hazier and become different. And there's this idea that, nobody knew that you were in a speculative bubble at the time. And I'm like, that's not true. Like, it was very clear that it was a speculative bubble. These were far smaller. And I think it's becoming very obvious that this is a bubble where it hasn't, the conversation has moved from, is it a bubble, to it's a good bubble. And then it's like, maybe it's not that bad of a bubble. So
we're probably going to benefit from this bubble in the aftermath of the, but one thing, AI has made everybody act crazy. Everybody act crazy. I mean, even Apple, who's usually so controlled in the way they launch things, full on went out and released ads for products that didn't exist. This week, there was a product called Neo that was released as a kind of like robot that will go around and do your chores. It can only open a door. The promise is that it will one day do the rest of it. It can do a couple of more things, allegedly, but the rest of the demos are all human controlled.
Yeah, they need to send Neo to rescue this robot called Dwight, who's stranded on 73rd Street in Collins in Miami Beach, because Dwight is in trouble.
The future is arriving fast, but it is buggy as hell. It's like there's a lot of jank in our future. I think we're going to have flying cars soon, but those are going to be falling out of the sky.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I haven't gotten into Waymo yet. I think that's one of those the future has arrived moments that I'm really looking forward to. A couple of cultural notes. One is I shared this in our group chat, but Daniel Kolitz, who has worked with me on the last two research reports that I've done at the rebooting. Yes, I know you read them all. Like, he's worked with me on these like first party data reports and whatnot. Very worthy topics. Okay. Don't get me wrong. But I was talking with Daniel. He's a freelance journalist, and that is a profession I really admire. The people who are, professional freelance writers, magazine writers too. And he was saying to me, I was like, well, what else are you working on right now? And he's like, I'm trying to get this story finished. I've been working on it for a year for Harper's. I was like, what's the topic? He's like, well, it's a little strange. I was like, just give me. I was like, I know. And he's like, it's about gooning. And I had never heard of gooning. And Daniel ended up getting this story finally across the line with Harper's, and it exploded. I mean, it's been everywhere, and it might be like the sort of magazine story of the year. So I personally, I think any of the writers out there, I mean, obviously you want to work with me on research reports because you go on to write the magazine story of the year. Gooning itself is a very disturbing and interesting phenomenon that I'm not going to fully get in. I thought the way Daniel handled it was amazing, a very deft touch. It was empathetic, but at the same time, it had some fun with it. I mean, these are, I guess, shut-ins, and I think these are that are a little bit, I would say, too into masturbation as a lifestyle. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah.
But if anyone has not seen this article by Daniel,
the Goon Squad. The
Goon Squad, it's amazing. I think he's going to get a movie deal out of this. It's absurdist. It's how we live now.
I was going to say, this is like The Big Short for masturbation.
Amazing. I don't think he's going to be working with me on future research reports. So get in touch. Congrats, Daniel.
I mean, doesn't that warm your heart that there's still kind of a path forward as a writer to have a big hit?
I love it. And I love working with like professional writers who are, you're in it for the love of the game, when you're like a professional narrative journalist. And I think that's wonderful. And I think there's always a place for that. I hope there will continue to be a place for that in our culture, because we'd lose something if we didn't. I was also reminded of that I don't know if you saw this, but there's this guy, Isaac Chotiner, who writes for The New Yorker, and he is known as the interview assassin. It's basically, if Isaac Chotiner sends you an email and says that he wants to do a Q&A with you, ignore that email. Do not do it. Because he does a ton of research, and he gives people enough rope to hang themselves with, and then just goes in for the kill. I'm just mixing metaphors, but the end result is the same, a dead body.
It sounds just, yeah.
So he did this with Karine Jean-Pierre, the former Biden spokesperson. Again, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It is an art form. The Q&A itself, I believe, is an underrated format. And he does it like a twist on almost like the old like Playboy Q&As, which were legendary for getting people to say things that they wouldn't otherwise do. And he is continuing that tradition. I mean, Playboy had a famous interview with Jimmy Carter where he confessed to having quote unquote lust in his heart, which at the time was actually scandalous.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it does. It was a different time. You know, I read these things, and this is a very good article, but I wish these were like little podcasts or something like that. Like I kind of, I kind of struggle with the interview as an article now. And I think I used to be able to read them a lot more, but now I find that it's kind of hard for me not to hear the person's voice. Like it feels like, you know, I'm so used to the podcast format holding this interview, right? The interview as a format.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like it feels
no,
like
it does.
Like a lesser version of it.
I wouldn't say it's a lesser version. I would say it's a different version. And
sure. I don't want to say writing is lesser than video audio.
We know how you feel about words.
I just think that the interview format is so 1-to-1, right? It's essentially a transcript, right? That I wish there was the audio version of it when I read one. It feels like it's missing. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think both audio and video have different dynamics to, you know, doing this. Like, I mean, he had an interview actually with CJR, the Columbia Journalism Review, about his like method. And like, you know, he's like pacing back and forth. He likes to do it standing, and like he grinds through, you know, he does like amazing amounts of prep for these things. Yeah. And they are kind of gotchas. There are gotcha moments, but like, you know, his point is like, hey, I wear it with pride. I do the work, and like, he's not like making things up. He's laying a trap, and people go into it. I like the fact that people will continue to go into, you know, the Thunderdome with him. I personally wouldn't, but good for him. And I think this form, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I don't know if you saw, like, Anthony Hopkins he has a new book out, and he's doing a lot of like press for it. And it's hard to differentiate when people are doing it, right? And the New York Times, and we'll get to them as a standout with their product, has a really interesting video interview with him in which the interviewer gets him to talk about Anthony Hopkins being estranged from his, I believe it's his daughter, not his son, his daughter. And, you know, I thought the interviewer did a really good job, and it was a very like not New York Times capital J journalist, where the interviewer talked about being estranged himself from his father. And that was unusual. I think it can get a little too, you know, I think it can easily get into, we talked about the performance element of it. It can become performative. I thought the way this interviewer did it was well done. And I think it is a sign of how legacy media does need to adapt. Doesn't need they need to like become YouTubers, like, you know, surprise guy face everywhere, but they need to update these formats.
Yeah, I think so. What we've seen in media lately is kind of the death of artifice, right? I was watching an interview. I cannot watch an interview on a late night show. They all feel completely, they're
funny. They're unintentionally funny.
They're unintentionally funny, but it feels like eating a fake version of a fruit. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what this is, but it tastes absolutely fake.
Yeah. So let's get into, I wanted to get into Tim Wu's book about extraction, but we'll cover that another time.
I think that was going to be fun one. It's going to be a fun one to do with Troy, that one, you know?
Yeah, well, Troy's pro extraction. We know
Yeah,
that.
he's all that.
But let's talk about making a good product, because to me, I'm fascinated with product within media, because for the longest time, I feel like, media companies have often not had to be audience focused, because their customers were differently, right? And so all of my conversations with publishers in particular are about how they shift their models from the traffic model and getting people to their websites through search, to how do you become a destination? How do you develop a habit with your audience? And then how do you monetize directly more often than not? And, media organizations, to me, they're just too complex. They're trying to serve too many masters, and it really shows up in what are honestly not great product experiences. And I think that's pretty obvious just using them, right? And when you outsource your distribution and monetization, that is going to happen, and the product has suffered. And I think that model needs to change. There is definitely a strategy where you outsource the product itself. I mean, I think a lot of what is happening on, whether it's YouTubers or Substack and Beehive and the rest, you're basically saying, hey, someone else, you handle the product. We're going to I'm just going to focus on the content. This is a point that Troy made. He was in our chat. He was saying that media companies, of course, are terrible at product, and that, that was like, don't be naive. I would argue, rather than naivete, that's a major issue right now, because if you are not going to be able to build good products, you are not going to survive, I think, in this marketplace, particularly if you have direct-to-consumer models. People want to have direct-to-consumer models versus relying on third parties. But in order to do that, it seems pretty clear, you got to start with a good product. So I want to bring you in, because you've dabbled in the media world, and like how media approaches product, right?
Yeah.
But you've also lived in a lot of product-driven organizations.
Yes.
What I'm interested in is media is a very insular industry, and it doesn't often learn the lessons from other fields. It spends a lot of time doing navel gazing and looking at what, the other guy is doing. And the competition for these companies is not from their peers. It's from generally technology and product organizations.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. When you say product, just to kind of frame it for the audience, I think, in Silicon Valley, there's a tendency to just call product a piece of software. But to me, it is, I don't know, it is kind of the thing that you sell directly to the consumer, right? Like your most kind of direct output. I would say it can mean like product can mean a lot of things. It's not just like an app that you download today. It could also be the way you express yourself on a platform, right? Which kind of complicates things. But because that whole thing's become a little messy, I wondered, because Troy said, like, of course, media companies can't build good products, but they used to, right? Like, I think like you would pick up one of those, a nice magazine or well,
exactly,
and it was a great product. These were great products. And the way I reframe it is just like, are you truly kind of like human-centric, customer-centric in your approach? Are you really thinking about the experience of a person, your customer, and what that experience is going to be at the tail end? And I think that got lost. Definitely, when I was in media in the kind of pre-Web 2.0 era, moving into the Web 2.0 era, there were a lot of us who were trying to build nice media products, but it wasn't rewarded, right? Like you failed if you did that, because everything shifted to the traffic model.
Well, it wasn't rewarded in the marketplace. Again, these are like my sort of like, we operate within systems, and then, the systems set incentives, and we respond to those incentives. I don't know, maybe this is bad. Like maybe it's a fatalistic approach, but I just feel like, we don't have as much autonomy as we like to believe, because we're just in these systems running around a maze, and like if people put
you
the
were
cheese.
in it. You were in it. You're probably a traffic hound at some point.
No, not at all. Because that's why I was. That's interesting, because that was a totally different and foreign model to me because the B2B model is not a traffic model. There's
True, actually much more customer centric, right? Because you're thinking about building a product for your customers rather than
yes and no, because often your customers are generally technology like SaaS companies and tech companies that want to sell to whoever your end audience is. So it's a balancing act because the audience often is the product in that. There's that old thing. It's like if the audience isn't paying you, they're the product.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think what happened either way is that there was definitely like some inevitability there, but there was also a lot of complacency. And when your core product that you're selling isn't great, then it's easy for the customers to start moving through like something like an aggregator and starts thinking like, well, YouTube is a better experience. Apple News is a better experience. So we're gonna experience everything through that. And so, there's this idea now that everything's going to be further kind of like disconnected via AI. Because honestly, like the way I talk about AI, I realize is that I talk about AI as a way to solve bad products. Like I hate using those sites and I hate going through these things. So therefore, I'm just going to have my AI agent go in and just absorb all this information and deliver it to me in a way that like is a much better interface than most of these sites, right? That's where we are today. But do you feel that's like a good framing of the issue that's at hand?
Yeah, and I think that the question ends up that I come back to is, can media companies actually build products that people want to come to, or is this like a losing proposition at this point? Because then you become a wholesaler. Just become a wholesaler. Stick to the content and. Write your little articles, do your little podcast, and then just let the smart tech people handle the product. And that's fine. That's a fine model. But I don't want to hear crying when the incentives change, because we've seen what happens when you give away your distribution. If you want to give away your distribution, give away your ad rights, give away all of your monetization, and then give away the actual product experience, that's a different business.
Yes. And you're potentially not only giving away your distribution here, but over time, whatever anybody tells you, you're also giving away your attribution. Your stuff's going to just be lost in a stream of data and it's just going to be consumed in all sorts of ways. So yeah, no, the way I look at it, I built this framework and I don't know if I invented it or I heard it somewhere and I forgot, but
you invented it.
Sure. Whatever. It's mine. The way I look at kind of like I
call it jobs to be done.
There's kind of like this hierarchy of needs. That's Laszlo's, but for these types of product, which needs to cover like three things. One is access, right? Like, are you providing access to something unique that people want? The second one is like low friction. Is it easier than any other way to do it? And then the third one is delight. Is it more fun to do it this way? And if you hit all these three, right? I mean, you can be successful with one of them because if you have unique access on something that people really want, on a shitty product, people are going to jump through hoops to get it. But I think most media companies fail to hit on all these 3 points. And so therefore, like, access gets relegated to a third party, aggregator. And the friction management gets handled. Well, I'm just opening this one app and everything's on this one app. That's way easier to me. But the delight is definitely missing. And I think the delight is often what builds like brand affinity, right? Like, I think using the New York Times app is nice. I prefer opening the New York Times app than I do the Apple News app. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To read some of my news. And that's because there was effort put into it. And that's an app. Mm-hmm. I think there is absolutely a market for people to go direct to customers, because if there wouldn't be the site that we call Patreon. And I know like Patreon is, maybe niche in our world, but it is a pretty much like a dominant figure in it's like, what Substack did to ex-reporters, I think Patreon is doing for a lot of creators around the world, right? Which is like an access through this app to pay directly for creators that you like and consume their content. Do you use Patreon at all?
No, I don't.
Okay. Patreon is great example of a terrible product that's serving a need, right? That just shows that there is so much opportunity for being able to build a direct to customer place where people can go in, pay for, access, pay for some sort of community, and have access to content, etc. Know that they're supporting their favorite creators. It's huge. It's huge in a lot of the podcasts I listen to, work through Patreon. But the entire process is essentially like being a sports fan. Like you have you're kind of opening different apps to access the content. You don't get these updates. It's a terrible product. And so I think that if there's room for that, there's room for people to create engaging products that people will go direct to. There's no reason not to.
Yeah. And I think there's the question of like, who can pull it off, right? So the New York Times is a great example of, I mean, it's the exception to the norm in a lot of ways. It's like, I remember back when I would focus on like advertisers, people would always use Red Bull. Red Bull was always the exception. They're like, look at Red Bull. Like, they put a guy like in the edge of space and got all this attention. And I'm like, yeah, but like Red Bull is not like your average CPG company. And it's almost a media company. So I think that doesn't really, but the New York Times is similar in that way, in that, they've really pulled off a remarkable transformation. And a lot of it comes down to they focused on the journalism, which is the core of the product, of course, right? And they hired a lot of journalists and they have, amazing journalism. But the other half of it is they really focused on the product. And when you start to use the New York Times app and you see the ways that they're integrating audio and now video, they've gotten sneakily good, I think, at video, and the user experience of the app is good. And the reason is, again, because they have to compete. They're not just a news organization anymore. I can remember talking with Meredith Levien, the CEO of the New York Times, when she first took over, and they had these ambitious goals at the time of getting to 10 million paying subscribers. I was like, I don't see it happening. I don't see this as a product that can get you there. And in order to get there, they had to build a multifaceted lifestyle product. They had to compete in games. They had to compete in cooking. They added the athletic and sports, right? And when you start to get into these other categories, you're competing with a different set of people, I think. And so I think that they've really upped their game. They put a lot of resources into their product development. And I think it shows. And a lot of media companies simply don't have those resources, and therefore the products that they're shipping are so far behind.
Yeah, I think, there was definitely, listening to Troy say like, there's, it's hard to do this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think you need particularly super large teams to do that. You need to take it seriously, right? And I think for the past 20 years, media has not taken their experience seriously, right? A lot of it's been optimized for SEO or like completely given up on and given, like distributing onto platforms. So who cares, right? So it is very likely a brand new muscle. I don't think this stuff is that hard. Maybe it's because I'm in it. I think at this point in time, we know what a good app is, right? Like you can see that the New York Times invests a lot in like the thing loads fast, right? For example, like it just loads fast. It doesn't glitch around as it's loading content. And all of that stuff is stuff that is like, it's not a hidden secret hidden in the hills here. Like people know how to build these types of products. I think it's more like a reframing of like, are these people running these companies? So there was a thing that Brian and I used to do at Airbnb. We used to use the app all the time. And there was kind of this running joke that Brian would be the first to find a bug.
This is Brian Chesky, not me.
Oh, yeah,
just
Brian
so everyone
Chesky.
knows.
Oh, yeah. The other Brian in my life. That Brian Chesky would be the first one to find a bug, even though we had, hundreds of millions of users. And that was often true because like he was obsessed. And, the Airbnb was a complicated company with like geopolitical situations happening, and yet like there was a lot of focus on the app and the product, and there was a lot of people saying, well, you need to put your attention elsewhere. And I was always of the point like, this is what people are using. Like 100 million people are going to hit this thing, right? This is the thing, right? And sure, all of the other stuff needs to work, and there's like things shifting money around and all that stuff that needs to work. We need to pay close attention to that. But at the end of the day, the key part of our product is this thing. And I'm not sure people in a lot of media companies do that. I'm not sure they use their app every day. I'm pretty sure that they get the latest article sent to them as a Google Doc and they know what they're doing, but they're not scrolling religiously and saying, why does this image pop? Like you still go to an article page where you start reading the article and the article shifts down because the image finally loaded at the top. Like if somebody in the company, like little by little, the way to eat an elephant is bite by, okay, let's make each one of these, because I do feel like access is one thing, that's what media companies should be good at, provide access to content that people want. And then the second thing is remove the friction, that's what gets people to use it every day. And then make it delightful it's what stops the churn, because people like using your app, right? And I think New York Times, whether they do it willingly or not, I'm pretty sure the executive team, and there's a lot of very senior team over there that look at this product every day. And that started happening a long time ago, where they started hiring, like great designers and software engineers to run their products.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, I go back to incentives, right? The incentives in the marketplace are such that you have a lot of like financializers, to make up a word, that run these companies. Like, I mean, Troy is not here to defend the legacy of David Zaslav, but apparently he stands to make $500 million from this pending sale of these assets to Paramount. I assume Paramount's going to get through.
HBO Max that turned into Max, that turned back into HBO Max. Like for the longest time, I couldn't rewind because that button was broken. Like, I think like.
And now they're doing CNN All Access, which is like long overdue, the DTC effort. And, they're not going to win in the marketplace based off of their products. So I think the incentives are such in this marketplace. I mean, AOL just got sold for $1.5 billion, which I want to talk to AB about.
Italian bending spoons
which
company.
is just amazing. I mean, I think that just shows where we are.
We live in an Onion article. Yeah, the CNN app is what, I really wanted that app 10 years ago.
Let's pull you into this discussion, AB. Tell me what is going on right now with Warner Brothers Discovery and this deal. Because we were talking about how media companies have really failed at making great products, when they used to be really good at making products, when it was things like magazines. Like, magazine is a product, and they were good at that until they became bad at it during the financial crisis, when they just sort of took all the effort out of it. But tell me a little bit about what's going on with this deal, because, Alex and I, Troy's not here to defend him, but Alex and I are sort of gobsmacked again, with a lot of people are, at it doesn't seem like David Zaslav has improved this business necessarily, but he's been able to financialize and position it as such that, he stands to reap a windfall from it.
I mean, so in terms of you want to talk about them not making good content, or what do you want to?
No. I want to talk about like where the sort of deal for. Talk us through the financial details of why Discovery, and whether it's well positioned to reap a windfall. And it seems like there's not a lot of bidders. It seems like it's probably going to Paramount. But what is this? What from your view is the status there?
Well, I don't think they probably wanted to be in this position. I mean, this Warner Brothers Discovery is a combination of a bunch of different assets, right? There's also, they acquired SNI, which was a bunch of cable channels. I think they're here because, and I'll answer the question that you don't want to talk about, but I think good content has just gotten a lot more expensive to make, right? So the two things have happened since that transaction. The sort of the combination of a bunch of these assets is that COVID increased, and a bunch of other factors increased how expensive it is to make content. So the supposition by putting a bunch of these assets together originally was, we can cut costs, we can still make great content, we'll have a better connection to consumers. The problem is the cost of content went up. It's gotten way more competitive to get consumers to watch your content. And then this whole fragmentation of, like, with people watching YouTube and things like that, the monetization there hasn't caught up to what you can generate on TV, and subscribers have gone down. So I think like a bunch of these sort of headwinds have caused them to sell. When Liberty owns businesses, they typically don't sell them. They do transactions in ways to preserve tax attributes get money back to the parent company or the owners, but they like to buy things and hold them for a really long time. So in terms of the transaction, I mean, there's only a few people who can buy it. I think what's interesting is like the people that are buying this have the same thesis as what happened originally when these assets were put together, is like, let's buy this, we can cut costs. There's still a ton of value in the IP and content. There's still connectivity to the users with a variety of brands, and we can sort of hope to hold on to that and then transition these people over to digital connectivity. I think one of the biggest struggles with any streaming service is when we used to sign up for cable, one, dealing with the people to cancel it was tough, but you were stuck in a year or two contract, so they could spend a lot of money to get you to sign up. Now it's very easy to cancel. There's government regulations that make it really easy to cancel. And so getting new subs and keeping them is really tough. And so any media company that is of size is probably going to look at this and actively engage, because they need other ways to get customers, keep them in the ecosystem, and hopefully continue to grow.
Yeah. Here's my idea. Paramount buys it and have one app, and really, really have a great app. It's an everything app. It's the media app. Forget about all this. It's too complicated, et cetera, et cetera. There's an opportunity there. I don't think that they'll be able to actually build the app, but you can combine Paramount Plus, CNN All Access. We can have another name for HBO Max, Max by HBO, whatever we want to call it. Put it all in one app.
Yeah. I mean, every time I use these apps, I'm always like, why can't it just be easier to watch the content that I want to watch? So
call it cable. Call the app cable. Yeah. I love it.
I mean, at times it's nearly, once again, one of the places where like the media landscape is it's both great to be a media consumer today and also like awful. It's definitely awful if you're a sports fan. But like on my Apple TV, I can search for any video across multiple platforms except Netflix, because they're not giving that data away. So if it's Netflix, you have to hop into the Netflix app.
Yeah, to be fair on the media companies sucking at product, there are serious complications when it comes to a lot of these rights deals, et cetera. And even Apple has struggled a bit, when it comes to its sports app. And I think that like shows that you can be great at product, but the problem, unlike say like an Airbnb, which sort of ignored some like regulations and whatnot, like you have media companies do not have that.
Is that your final gotcha question?
No, it's not gotcha. Like I was always like, oh, sharing economy. Sure, you're an unregulated hotel. You're an unregulated taxi service. Media companies don't get to do that.
Yeah, no, I got to build enough like tax system for individual cities to know that we were doing at least something with them. But yeah, no, look, a lot of it is like inevitable. A lot of it is going to be very hard. I know, but I think media companies still have some agency, right? Like I think a lot of the time, like if you do build a better product, it will reap rewards. It just, it sometimes takes a long time. And yeah, like I find that like at this day and age, you do need to have full control of your content to build a better product, I think. And this is what Apple is noticing with sports, where they're saying like, we want to own the experience end to end, which is why they could only get MLS and now F1, right? Because these are rights that you can buy end to end, and potentially you can build a great product. Everything is integrated, all the marketing is integrated. Apple does not want to build things in parts because they know, controlling the entire chain is what matters.
Yeah. So AB, I want to talk a little bit about Travis Kelsey as an activist investor, and broadly the value of celebrity investors, right? Like when I saw Travis Kelsey was part of an activist group taking over Six Flags, I can remember Six Flags very fondly from my youth. Amusement parks, I think, sort of went into terminal decline, but
well, not Disney.
Great Adventure. Oh, Great Adventure got a little, like Dorney Park, and some of these places just went a little bit downhill. Anyway, talk to me about like why this makes sense. Because when I saw this, and there's a lot of moments I see these things come, I'm not sure whether they're like parodies or not. I mean, Travis Kelsey is not like there's like jokes about whether he can read or not, and we have seen it continues like the celebrity investor. Kim Kardashian has a big portfolio. Saquon Barkley on my Philadelphia Eagles, he's on a ton of cap tables. He's doing real well for himself. So start by explaining to me the actual value of celebrity investors.
What's usually negative, because the problem is they'll put some equity in, but they want additional equity for what they tell the company they're going to bring, right? So for smaller businesses, especially when there's an adjacency to media, there will be celebrity or creator-like people who want to invest, but then also get additional equity. I think that when it comes to D2C brands, you can really see who has influence to affect purchase decisions. So when you mentioned Kim Kardashian, she has her own brands, and then she tried to do that private equity. I think it stopped. She was trying to do a private equity firm where she was going to buy larger stakes in businesses, which is a different thing, right? So when you talk about what she's doing on the D2C front, she can drive engagement. She has.
Oh yeah, I get that.
So when you take, so when we talk about Travis and what he's doing with Six Flags, I think if I was the hedge fund that was leading that activist campaign, I would look more, he's not going to fix the business. He might go there and get a season pass, but he has this podcast and he's marrying the most sought after musician in the last 10 years. And so he has a ton of influence and he can talk about it on this podcast. Now, at some point, he can't talk about it too much because it starts to, everyone's like, what are you doing? But I think in this world of memification of stocks, having someone like that who can bring another layer of investors to the stock and potentially push it up, I don't know where GameStop is today, but for a very long time, that stock has traded up based on the Reddit of it all, right? There's interesting communities around certain stocks and certain segments because people that have excess capital besides their 401k that invest in the stock market, that don't follow the Warren Buffett, just put it in an index and let it grow. But there's a lot of people that put lots of concentrated bets, way too concentrated into stocks that they think they're going to get a return. Sometimes they benefit from that. So I think when you think about what Travis brings to this activist campaign, one, I think that probably the market cap of this business is relatively small, but think about it, they got really good coverage in the Wall Street Journal. If they need to continue to push the management, it sounds like when you read that article, that it's been a complete disaster after the merger and how they've integrated the two companies of these two theme park companies. And so anytime you have an issue, because boards and executives react a lot to what's in the press in these activist campaigns, and Travis can easily just step on the mic and get it out there. And so it's a really valuable and powerful microphone. He doesn't know how to operate a theme park, but that's why
I think that's safe.
That's why the hedge fund has a lot of smart people that are expensive and they hire consultants to tell the management team what to do. But there's so many situations where there can be positive activism to change a company. And when you read the fact pattern, I don't know anything about these businesses, but when you read the fact pattern in the Wall Street Journal, there needs to be change based on just basic metrics in terms of the value they're getting per person attending, how they change the prices incorrectly, blah, blah, blah. So I think I thought it was interesting. I thought it was smart. When you talk about celebrities investing in businesses, I always think there's one person who I think has done it exceptionally well, Ryan Reynolds. He's made so much money. But most of these athletes that are investing, it's driven by their best friend they grew up with having access to the piggy bank and throwing a bunch of checks into businesses, and usually it doesn't turn out well, right?
Or alcohol, or tequila brands.
Okay, that I get. But I get it when you're a front for, you're basically a distribution hack in some ways.
A good one. I think this was a really good. I was like, oh, this is smart.
Ashton Kutcher was the original one of this. I feel he got on
investor in Airbnb early.
Yeah, he got into tons of deals.
But that was a legitimate thing where he actually met with companies. That was not having his best friend throw money into 10 businesses. Right. Yeah.
Right. Or a company kind of pulling a celebrity in. At some point, I don't know if she had stock, but at some point, Lady Gaga became creative director of Polaroid, which I'm sure worked out great for them. But the best case scenario then is probably he's just happy to be on for the ride, doesn't say much, just talks about
literally on for the ride. Yeah. No, I
think Oprah did a really good job for Weight Watchers. There's instances where, so people with talent have been able to drive successful enterprise growth by bringing their halo to another brand, right? Or to a brand, to a consumer brand. This is the Travis example is more of like a financial situation where effectively an activist campaign is trying to force someone to do something they don't want, right? Or they want to do yet. And so in that instance, you're just trying to get more leverage, and Travis brings the ultimate leverage. I think with
the audience, with an audience that would probably be like customers of Six Flags as well, right?
Yeah.
Can you give me the lowdown on this AOL for 1.5 billion deal? Congrats to Apollo. Amazing job, guys. AOL was a $400 million in EBITDA business on like $500 million in revenue. That's a great business. That's like the best media business around is AOL. I don't know what it says about the sector. What is bending? First of all, what is Bending Spoons? I do not know the work of Bending Spoons.
It's an Italian-based roll-up that acquires companies like Vimeo and that note-taking app that was supposed to be big that never got big. So it's effectively acquiring Evernote, the Tim Ferriss note-taking app. So they acquire businesses with sticky customers. They help increase cash flow. And like that's it. We live in this world of excess capital. There's so much money at private equity firms, so much money at all these credit funds that need to get some sort of return. And so their thesis is, let's buy these businesses, run them a little bit more efficiently, and eke out some returns where maybe there's not a terminal value, meaning they're not going to sell it, but the cash flow pays down the debt and provides some return for the shareholders. So that's what they're based in Italy, but they buy a lot of US-based companies. In terms of AOL, I think it just speaks to like Brian, when I was on your podcast, you asked me for like the 3 best companies, and a lot of companies.
AOL. What the second?
But here it's a very important point. I bump into people every day that if I told you how they make money, it's all legal. I'm saying like it's very weird, like not weird, but it's boring. It's boring, and that's what AOL is. You go to the website. Guess what? Most old people, when they go to websites, the biggest problem they have is forgetting their password. It's just a simple fact. And they can't figure out how to reset it. There's a telephone number on AOL.com. You call it, they help you reset your password, and they say, guess what? Do you need antivirus today? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's $20 a month. It's the same price you would get it anywhere else. Let us help you sign up. And so
I mean, it's extractive. I know like I'm a moralistic like journalist. There's so much. I mean, this is the Tim Wu book we didn't get to. Like so much of the economy has shifted into extraction, and it's a little depressing to me. Like, I mean, I was saying earlier that like when I was on a flight down to Miami last week, like they were like, look out the left side of the window, SpaceX rocket launch is going by. And I'm like, oh my God, we're in like an age of wonders. But then like I literally land to come back to Earth, and it's like, it's all extraction.
Or, I mean, I thought you were going to say they tell you to look out the window and then they tell you to sign up for the credit card. Yeah, I mean, we are in an age of consumption. Like most net employment ads are around consumer service businesses. So it just is what it is. But my point back on AOL is it's a very significant business that most people sort of are negative on. But to me, companies that can go after these customer cohorts that have the money to spend, that need products. I mean, they sell other things that are valuable, password keepers. It's all at the same cost as you could get anywhere else. So it's not just things you don't need, right? And they offer telephone support, and most websites don't do that. So if your parents want to have an AOL.com address and not call you when they get locked out for their password, AOL provides that. So
yeah. Wonders never cease. Any of these businesses that have large call center operations, I assume, are very profitable. That's usually a sign that they're operating in a part of the economy that's a little messy, and that's usually where the margin lies, I think. All right, so do we have a good product? Okay. Alex, do you want to wrap us up with a good product, a good media product? Walk us through like what you think is, and it can be media adjacent, but a good product.
We talked about the New York Times. It's a good product. I think, you've heard a lot of ground news.
Ground news.
Yes, ground news. way to go to build like something kind of like interesting and new. I think they're really advertising on podcasts. It's a generally pretty decent experience, and I enjoy using it as far as aggregators go.
What's their twist on this?
Well, their twist is, it's not like, there were a lot of these products that tried to have a fair and balanced view of news and showing the left and the right. But instead, what they do is that they kind of show they'll kind of cover topics and then show you the distribution across the spectrum of, left to right leaning and centrist. It's interesting to see like which area, because sometimes you read something that's like, I wonder how the other side's covering this. Turns out they're not, or turns out they're a lot, or turns out they're doing it differently. I think if you're news curious, that's a really good product to use. Yeah, there aren't a ton. I mean, I kind of wish there were better news products, honestly, like out in the world. Like that's one of the things where I think like there's an opportunity for CNN to potentially build something that is for like news hounds, like people, right? If you build something for people who are fans of the topic, then you have an opportunity potentially to expand that. So like, and I don't know what that looks like, but imagine like the Bloomberg terminal for people who love news, like whatever that looks like, rather than just an app that you go to and you get access to different videos. That I think that type of stuff is gone. Like, and I find myself, just as a small example, right? Like Amazon, who's otherwise a terrible video ad, added this thing where you could kind of call radar or X-ray or something like that, where you could kind of pause a frame and whoever was in that frame, you could see all the actors and kind of read their bio, right? Which is an experience that people do a lot. Apple added that. Like this is where like when you're building products, like when you're building media products, you can do anything you want. You can have like a video player that has additional information coming on the right. Like what is it that you can add to this stuff? I'm thinking it's easier to build an app today than it ever was, and we're not really seeing anything more like anything new coming out. So hopefully.
Well, I think part of that is like nobody knows what to build because of all of this AI hype and whatnot. Like, because it's like there's a certain amount of paralysis that can like set in with so many of the unknowns.
Yeah, but which I think that's going to hurt so bad, because the paralysis is letting like OpenAI run away with. They're building products. They're trying shit out. They're putting stuff out into the world.
I hope so. They have limitless capital, it seems. So I hope they're shipping something.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, the browser's kind of a dud, but there is activity. Like people do want novel things to do. Like, you know what I mean? It's not just like I know that Netflix is spending money and experimenting in different things to do in the Netflix app. Like they're trying stuff out. And so,
well, they're also under threat. Like they're under threat from YouTube. So that can help.
They're under threat. I think. That threat is just like every company just needs to keep growing. And I think with the threat that they're seeing is that the only way to grow is to grow into YouTube's territory. That's the threat that they see.
Yeah,
like they're butting up against YouTube.
Exactly.
That's it for this episode of People vs. Algorithms, where each week we uncover patterns shaping media, culture, and technology. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Vanya Arsenov. She always makes us a little clearer and more understandable, and we appreciate her very, very much. If you're enjoying these conversations, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It helps us get the word out and keeps our community growing. Remember, you can find People vs. Algorithms on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and now on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
All right, let's leave it there. Alex, this is great. Thank you.
Thank you.